Hey guys, hopefully I'm back online here. I had a little bit of a technical issue, so I apologize for that. But just jumping back into it, I might just kind of start back up at the top to kind of regain my train of thought here. I just wanted to run through some of the stuff going on with the natural disaster happening out in California with the fires. You know, I used to live in California, and every year the Santa Anas would kick up. I felt like it was around the August timeframe. So, you know, what's going on now in January, I don't know if it's correlated to that or not, but they had significant winds, dry conditions that just accelerated this whole scenario for them. But along the way, there's been clear indications that there have been some bad decisions made. There's missteps that have happened that have perhaps even made this situation worse. A lot of folks have said, you know, don't politicize this scenario, but I think we've really gotten past that point. There's just certain realities that I think need to be made a little bit more visible, that folks need to, you know, take into consideration and really see what's going on around them. Let me try and zoom in on this a little bit more. All right. So again, you go to politicalcow.com if you want to check out the stream notes on there. But I mean, to kick things off here, you know, don't politicize it. So many people are saying that out there. And of course, what's the first thing you see? Everybody's making the case, and in this one, blaming corporations. Right? Corporations got us into this mess, but they can't escape the devastating realities of climate change, is the comment. I mean, if just phenomenal. How do you kind of leverage this tragedy to kind of push something that's not really beneficial to the people that are impacted? And a lot of people are impacted. I mean, some of the images, if you go see them now, it looks like it was leveled, like from a hurricane. So, I mean, just completely ridiculous stuff going on out there. And of course, then I'm going to replay this one here from Gavin. He's not really taking any accountability. Some of these decisions, yes, they did lie with cities and counties, but others sit with him. And so you see him out here in front of the disaster as it's unfolding, and it really looks like he's there for a photo op. The hat, you know, hat's nicely, you know, it's clean, you know, tilted a little bit. Somebody picked that outfit for him out. He's really out there for the photo op. And I mean, listening to, you know, the questioning that Anderson Cooper has for him, and he's just not taking ownership over any of this, any of these things that are going on.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, ran out last night in the hydrants. I was talking to the firefighter in this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe one fire. You have something at this scale, but again, that's got to be determined by the local.
So there again, this needs to be figured out by the local officials. These systems were made for just like 1 or 2. I mean, absolutely bizarre. Bizarre responses, bizarre feedback. In fact, just keep going on. It's not just the access to the water that's at issue. The funding. You know, there's a lot of criticism now of the fire chief that's out there. But this notice was sent out to the Board of Fire Commissioners on the 4th of December, this last December here, sent out to them. imploring them like, hey, this additional 7 million you guys have reduced, right? And it was for overtime pay for staff or for the firefighters. Now it's one thing, cutting budget for a new project. Like, hey, this is not the time to make big investments. We just need to, kind of keep the lights on here. You see, you're pointing out, I mean, this is the key statement here. These budgetary reductions have adversely affected the department's ability to maintain core operations. And she goes on to name the different pieces around technology, infrastructure, communications, and so forth. They cannot even provide services to the people that they are designated to look out for and protect because of these budgetary cuts. This is one example of 7 million. Other folks have totaled it up, and it was upwards of 20 plus that has been cut. And then not more than a month later, you have what's going on now, or actually just a little over a month later, you have the fires break out, an absolute disaster. I've seen some interviews of folks saying that, they have not adequately funded this for many years, and they've just gotten lucky every time, either wind direction or where it was initiated. They've just gotten lucky all this time. So there's clear documentation of this public record that there were objections made to these budgetary cuts, where they were sent to the city of Los Angeles, where there were demands of, you need to release the water access. These conservation decisions are not really helpful. So there's a lot of this stuff that's already coming to light pretty quickly. And so I thought this was an interesting personal account of what was going on there.
So I'm watching the neighborhood that I lived in burn to the ground. Grocery store I used to shop at, neighborhood I worked in, and then on into the Palisades. I used to nanny in the Palisades. All of it, live coverage of it burning to the ground, leveled. Altadena, where I just lived, is leveled right now. Absolutely catastrophic. You want to know what Biden did today? Who is still our president? He flew to California. And if you think to yourself, oh, he flew there for the fires. No. He flew there for a family thing and then flew out immediately. And I'm watching all these firefighters go, we don't have any water. We just have to watch these homes burn to the ground because we don't have any water. And then I remembered however many months ago Trump was on Rogan, a couple months ago. He talked about how stupid and dangerous it is that Gavin Newsom won't allow basically us to get a whole bunch of water to California because it's like protecting some kind of fish. He wouldn't sign off on getting them more water, and he also wouldn't sign off on like cleaning the forest floors where there's like debris and stuff like that like makes it extremely easy for fires like this to break out. What's happening there right now is heartbreaking, and in many ways that place is like a home to me. It was for a decade. I hope that the devastation of this, the crystal clear lack of a strong leader that gives two fucks about the state of California, makes the residents there turn against him, because he's scum. There's a reason why they call him Gavin New Scum.
So a lot of Hollywood actors, I have no idea who this person is. I'm kind of old, right? But it was posted as either an influencer or what have you. I don't know. But a lot of actors in Hollywood have been impacted by this. Palisades is a very nice area. Many years ago, 20 years ago or so, I actually went to a job interview, and when I rolled up in the area, I first drove along the ocean, right? It's a highway that just went along the ocean, but the highway was to my left, and to my right were these like majestic cliffs that just overlooked the ocean. And I slowly made my way up. I don't know if they were foothills or just cliffside, up to a mansion that was there. And I went in, and they were, trying to start a new tech company at that point in time. This group of kids that were there. But I was just like shocked as to like how nice this area was. I know folks are kind of saying like, oh, these are like wealthy people. Yeah, there's like a lot of large homes, a lot of, very wealthy people there, but there's also a considerable number of folks that have owned that house for 30, 40 years. And you have to think of what's happened with the market and the prices of homes over that period of time. It's not that they necessarily bought it at current market value, $1 million+ dollars. they bought that at a reasonable amount of money, 25, 30 years ago. And as is the case with a lot of folks in California, they can't move now because where you sell your home here, where are you going to go? Right? It becomes increasingly difficult to find a new place. Music therapy, I see they're calling for the resignation immediately of Newsom. So here's another clip, all right, of Newsom, one of the residents there locally that's just in an absolute panic, as are just about everybody, confronted him when they saw him out there, and the news followed in. So, I mean, actually, Sky News is the one that published this, a European news agency, right? Not even an American one. European news is actually having better coverage, showing some of these more real moments that people are having.
Governor, I live here, Governor. That was my daughter's school, Governor. Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call?
I
Because
can't-
I
it
don't
doesn't-
believe it.
I'm sorry. There's literally, I've tried 5 times. That's why I'm walking around to make the
Why
call.
is the president not taking your call?
Because it's not going through. So
Why?
I have to get cell service.
So
There's
let's
no
get
cell
it.
service.
Let's get it. I want to be
That's
here when
what
you
I'm
call the
doing.
president.
I appreciate it. I'm doing that right now. And it's to immediately get reimbursements, individual assistance, and to help you. I'm devastated for you. I'm so sorry, especially for your daughter. I have 4 kids. Losing the school.
Everyone who went to school there, they
I
lost
know.
their homes. They lost
I know.
2 homes because they were
I know.
living in one and building another. Governor, please tell me, what are you going to do with the president
good.
right now?
We're getting the resources.
I mean, you can hear the pain in her voice. He is cornered here, right? This is kind of catching him off guard, of course. But I think, generally speaking, a lot of folks in California have looked the other way with a lot of his actions just because he had a D next to his name, that he was a Democrat. And that's just the way that the state voted. I remember when I was there, it was almost assumed that you would vote Democrat, or that you would vote for, well, I mean, vote Democrat. That's about it. Some people went green and so forth, but more or less, the assumption is that you were a Democrat and you were shunned away if you said anything otherwise. And so for a very long time, people just went along with that, at least the circles that I was in while I was there. And a lot of the decisions, everything, generally speaking, in my experience, people just looked the other way and allowed it to happen. And over the course of years and years, this is the result of it: the poor forest management, the poor decision-making around conservation of that water that Trump went on the Joe Rogan show about. I'll look that up and add a link on the stream notes for that. And if you want to take a look at the stream notes for folks that just joined, just go to politicalcow.com. I got a link in my bio to it. You can check it out there as well. But it's absolutely ridiculous what's going on out there. And the sad part is it's really just kind of like I don't know if you want to call it a peer pressure, a social pressure of some kind, that people have just allowed this to continue for so many years. Brian says, I'm guessing he's going to implement lockdowns due to air quality, then have dinner at the French Laundry. When I've gone back, there's some, been a few hardcore Democrats that, I've interacted with in that moment where he was demanding everyone be locked down, and yet he was having a party, not taking any of the precautions, way too many people in that room. That really burned for those folks. That really, really did not appreciate that. But at the same time, they continued to look the other way, because that was 4 years ago. And yet, look, he's the governor now still. But that really burned them. And I think this is like the final straw at this point. This is the moment where the tables have turned on him, and there's nothing he can do. Because, I mean, you think of like what was the most recent misstep before this, and it was clearly the $24 billion he allocated towards homelessness that the state of California cannot account for now. They have no idea where it went. They have absolutely no clue. And so you got to pause and think about that. Like, wait a minute, $24 billion has gone missing, more or less, and yet you cut the budget for fire services by 20 million. Cannot account for 24 billion. Won't approve 20 million for essential services. They're not even asking for new equipment. They just want to maintain the stuff they've got. They said this was for core services, right? The document we looked at earlier, and there's quite a bit of documentation around that. Lord wants to roll the clip. Let's roll the clip.
To help rebuild. We're getting
Why
the
was there
resources
no
to do it.
water
I mean,
in the hydrants,
that's
Governor?
all being that's all literally.
Is it going to be
being
different next time?
It has to be. Has to
Right.
be. Of course.
What are you going to do?
I'm doing
To
everything
fill the
I can.
hydrants. I would fill them up personally. You know that.
I literally have.
I would fill up the hydrants myself.
I would. I understand.
But would you do that?
I would do whatever I can. I've
But
been
you're
doing whatever I
not.
can.
I see the. Do you know there's water dripping over there, Governor? There's water coming out there. You can use it.
I appreciate it. I'm going to make the call to address everything I can right now, including making sure people
I'd
are
like
safe.
to make sure you do.
guys.
Can
He
I?
needs
Can
to
I
call
have an
the president.
opportunity
He
to at
needs
least
to-
tell
he needs to
people
call
you're
the
doing what
president.
you're saying you're doing?
Thank you.
Could somebody have a contact? Can I have your contact
yes.
information?
Right
Right
there.
now.
Thank you.
The water that she was talking about was the fire hydrants just not having the right amount of water pressure, not having any water coming through it. Just in the clip that we're looking at earlier, him blaming local municipalities with the interview with Anderson Cooper. And of course, in this case, he's just kind of avoiding directly addressing anything. But again, the water has been diverted. Again, I'll add that Joe Rogan show clip from Trump to the stream notes. But there's been many decisions, funding, conservation decisions that did not really make sense. There was not really that much of a gain to get out of it. All of them for photo ops, right? He showed up at these places for photo ops, more or less. That's the only reason that he's there. There's not anything that he can tangibly do to support folks through it. And of course, this meme is going around. I know it's making light of the situation, but latest update from the mayor of Los Angeles.
Girl come downstairs. She come out her apartment with her baby with no shoes on. I said, "Oh, girl, it's cold outside." She said, "Something ain't right." I said, "Oh man." She said, "Oh man, the building is on fire." I said, "No, what?" I got my 3 kids and we bounced out. We ain't gonna be in no fire, not today.
And so, of course, Biden came out with a press conference. Let me get that up and running here. And, to his credit, he did very quickly offer support and offer funding from the federal government. But of course, then that kind of gives you pause. It's like, well, wait a minute. What happened to Maui? What happened to North Carolina? How come they've had such a struggle throughout this process? What's the deal with that, right? So the inconsistency in response is leading to a lot of conclusions that may or may not be true. This being California, a massive liberal state that they want to take care of their base, versus, say, North Carolina that may not even, be anywhere near the level of blue that California is. But nonetheless, it's raising a lot of interesting questions and dilemmas for the Democrats. I mean, at this point, they're losing even more credibility with the public. But I'll just acknowledge, he did quickly come out and say federal aid is, fully approved. Let's get this out there and done. He could have just as easily kind of, let things kind of slowly slide or, do things to make the situation a little bit more difficult for Trump as he's transitioning in, because there have been actions taken like that. But this one he actually did follow through on a little bit. But it's still questionable because it's Newsom, somebody that the party may be looking at for the future presidential run. Are they looking to protect him in some way? I don't know. I honestly don't know how he can kind of get over this debacle.
Everybody in? Yes, sir. Well, good afternoon. I returned from Los Angeles last night, and the devastation out there is catastrophic in California. Thousands of houses, schools.
I need to verify this, but there have been a few reports that have come out that even though he's saying he was in California, he did not engage with any of the residents or kind of take a firsthand look at the damage as typically a president would in these major natural disaster situations.
Schools, businesses burned to the ground, communities wiped out, lives lost, families forever changed. They're the worst fires to ever hit Los Angeles, ever. And as soon as these fires broke out, I approved the Fire Management Assistance Grants. It's a term of art and how we get help to local officials. These grants cover California's firefighting costs for things like firefighting equipment, firefighter salaries, and special capabilities like aircraft. Next, yesterday I immediately approved Governor Newsom's request for what they call, and I know this is all sounds like government talk, but it's called the Major Disaster Declaration. This declaration allows folks, at the request of the governor, the declaration allows folks who have been impacted to get immediate cash assistance to cover things like everything from groceries to baby formula to prescriptions, because as you've seen and you've reported, a lot of these places are burned to the ground. There's not a single thing left in their homes. And so if they contact disasterassistance.gov, anybody who's lost everything or anything of consequence, disasterassistance.gov or 1-800-2, I beg your pardon, 1-800-621-3362. That's disasterassistance.gov, 1-800-621-3362 to get the kind of help they need for everything from the basics that they don't have access to right now. And this morning, due to the magnitude of the disaster, I was talking with the governor, and he requested if I could increase the federal funding that was authorized under this legislation from 75% to 90%. We're increasing it to 100% of all the costs to be covered by the federal government for both the fire management assistance grants and the elements of what they call the disaster declaration. So today I'm announcing that the federal government will cover 100% of the cost for 180 days. This is going to pay for things like debris and hazard material removal, temporary shelters, first responders' salaries, and all necessary measures to protect life and property. And folks, I want to underscore, I told the governor and local officials, spare no expense to do what they need to do and contain these fires and in their communities that have really been devastated. And we're doing literally everything we can at a federal level. That's also why I call this group of folks around this table of all relevant federal departments and agencies together to discuss what more we can do. And some of the folks around the screen as well. Before we begin things, here's an update on where things stand right now. First, we focused on helping contain these fires. Over the last 24 hours, the United States Forest Service, working with state and local responders, has suppressed over 50 fire starts. And the fire in the Hollywood Hills has been contained by brave firefighters risking their lives. Right now, 3 major fires are still burning in the Pacific Palisades, in Pasadena, and in Sylmar. I want to be clear. What I know from talking to the governor, that there are concerns out there that there's also been a water shortage. The fact is, the utilities understandably shut off power because they're worried the lines that they carry the energy were going to be blown down and spark additional fires. But the Cal Fire, and when it did that, it cut off the ability to generate pumping the water. That's what caused the lack of water in these hydrants. And so CAL FIRE is bringing in generators to get these pumps up and working again so that there's no longer a shortage of water coming out of these hydrants. I'm also surging all federal resources possible to Southern California, including 400 additional federal firefighters, over 30 firefighting helicopters and planes, federally supplied, firefighting planes and helicopters, and 8 Department of Defense C-130s that are equipped to suppress wildfires. Today, the Secretary of Defense also authorized 500 wildfire ground clearing personnel from the Defense Department. And I've directed the department to continue working with Governor Newsom to identify additional resources that can be provided for public safety and security. And we've secured additional firefighters and firefighting aircraft from our ally in Canada as well. I also want everyone in Southern California to know we're going to keep at it. We're sticking with this. We expect there may be a temporary break in the winds, but in some areas the winds are likely to continue well into next week. And so we're going to continue to sending everything, literally, every resource we can find that's appropriate to help the governor and the first responders. Second, we're focused on helping people who have been displaced or in many cases lost everything. You've reported on, you've seen the homes just burned to the ground, whole areas burned to the ground, large areas. They've been displaced and they've lost everything. As I said, since the fire started, FEMA has been working with the state to help residents get shelter, groceries, prescription, and other critical goods like baby formula. We're also sent FEMA Director Criswell to Los Angeles to manage our response on the ground.
Hey, Mason, yes, I'm live. I'm rewatching this from earlier. Went through some clips of Gavin Newsom's poor responses, blaming local officials, everybody but himself. And there's been a cascading effect of a number of poor decisions around diverting water in the state away from cities like Los Angeles, causing these major drought scenarios, poor forest management, not clearing the dry brush and a lot of the other areas. They cut funding for that, funding being cut for core services as it was described, objections that we showed earlier being sent to the State Fire Commission by the fire chief in Los Angeles. So upwards of $20 million was cut, and they clearly articulated like this will impact our ability to sustain core services. Not trying to buy anything new here, just core services will not be sustained if we cut this funding. And yet we're in the situation that we're in now.
She was supposed to be on this call, but we have the deputy here because she is out in the field with the governor right now, surveying what's going on. Let me close with a message to the people of Southern California. We are with you. We're not going anywhere. To the firefighters and first responders, you are heroes. Many of these firefighters are out there risking their lives, and some, well, I won't go beyond that, but risking their lives, and while their own homes are in danger, their families are in danger. To the firefighters and first responders, you really are, it's not hyperbole, you're heroes. You're genuinely heroes. And the worst, this is the most widespread, devastating fire in California's history. It's amazing. And there's nobody who understands it better than the press have been covering this on a minute-to-minute basis. And you literally have to run into the flames, these firefighters. That old expression, God made man, then he made a few firefighters. Who runs into flames? In doing so, you're leaving your own families and who may be in harm's way as well. So we owe you. And we're going to make sure that you get every resource you need, every possible resource you need. To the families who have been impacted by this disaster, you're living through a nightmare, I know. And I promise you, we're going to help you get through this and eventually recover and rebuild. I'm going to turn it over now to the Vice President before we go on to the folks in the
And honestly, I'm not sure if it's typical for the vice president in these scenarios to, layer in some additional comments or not. I'm thinking that is strategically now, some sort of political strategy behind this. Is it the case that they're looking to have her be the governor of California? And Newsom's his terms are up at this point. There's nowhere for him to go, but there may be somewhere for her to go. And is that for her to take over the governorship? So let's see how she responds and how they kind of frame her role in this briefing that they're giving to the press.
And the various cabinet positions as well as agencies that control these issues. Madam Vice President, I know you're directly affected, so you fire away. No pun intended.
Indeed. Thank you, Mr. President, and also for the work that everyone around this table has been doing with the appropriate sense of urgency, because this is an urgent matter. What we have seen in California, and in particular in Southern California, is apocalyptic in terms of the nature of it and the unprecedented nature of it as well. And what we are seeing is a situation that is extremely dynamic. It is very much in play, and to some degree unpredictable, because we are literally waiting to see which way the wind blows. And I cannot praise enough the local leaders, most of whom I have talked with, and in particular our firefighters, who, as the President has said, they are working around the clock. They are working 12-hour, even longer shifts, and they are doing it with a sense of optimism, but also with an understanding of how serious this moment is and how important their work is to real lives and real people. Thousands of families have been displaced. Many of those families with young children with nowhere to go. And what we know is that this is a matter of current urgency, but this is also something that is going to have an impact for months and years to come. And on that point, I will also make note of the fact that, sadly, many insurance companies have canceled insurance for a lot of the families who have been affected and will be affected, which is only going to delay or place an added burden on their ability to recover. And I think that is an important point that must be raised, and hopefully there can be some way to address that issue, because these families, so many of them, otherwise will not have the resources to recover in any meaningful way. And many of them have lost everything. In the midst, however, of all of the trauma that has occurred, we have seen extraordinary acts of heroism. I am hearing countless stories of strangers helping strangers. People who are opening their homes where they are intact and have not had to evacuate, opening their homes to neighbors, to friends of neighbors, feeding them and providing shelter for them. And I do think that it speaks to the best of who we are as a country, which is, in times of crisis, we find the heroes among us who we may not have known before, but act out of a sense of courage, but also a sense of community. And I applaud all those who are approaching this crisis with that spirit. And the bottom line is this: there are incredible heroes every day who are working right now.
I want to flip over real quick. Somebody mentioned North Carolina in there again. They're really dealing with a lot in North Carolina. Let me see if I could share this one really quick over here. One sec, y'all. Just flipping this around. Yep, come on. Okay, there we go. So let me just scroll down. Again, these stream notes are on politicalcow.com if you want to check out the references to the various posts and everything. It's getting pretty cold in North Carolina. FEMA is close to telling folks that, sorry, we can't extend your support any longer, even though a lot of people are just caught in the middle of the process. There's just too much processing, too many inspections that have to get done, and they're getting caught in the middle of things here. But let me play this lady's account of what's going on in North Carolina. And you think about how much time it took for them to respond and provide support there versus the immediacy in this organized press conference that's coming out here.
I'm still waiting on an inspection through FEMA. And I called them yesterday, matter of fact, and she said that, yes, you have an inspection due. Don't know when they're going to contact you. But however, your hotel voucher ends on Friday. You have to be out by Saturday.
Mary Jo Tucker was displaced by the storm. She says that she's been waiting for the inspection from FEMA for quite some time now.
And I don't know when they're going to get this inspection done. And I'm just one of very many people in this hotel that is going to be homeless, and I can't imagine being homeless, especially right now with this storm coming in.
Battling with the cold as she describes her struggles to find safe accommodations.
I can't imagine what's going to happen in 2 days, not being able to sleep in a bed or be warm at night, you know?
News 13 reached out to FEMA. The agency would not comment on specific cases, but says if a household has pending inspection, they are still eligible for transitional sheltering assistance. FEMA says that it's taken the agency between 4 to 5 days to fulfill an inspection request. They say anyone with questions should contact the FEMA helpline or visit a disaster recovery center.
So you can clearly see there's folks that are continuing to struggle. I mean, it hasn't been, that long for everybody to have really kind of turned the corner on the recovery, but the assistance that they should be receiving it's either not there or, folks are just not, not being told the right things, right? Being put under a lot of duress for no reason, right? I don't know which it is. Like, are they just not communicating internally enough to, let people kind of know the situation is, and they can, reassure some folks here. But there's a lot of stress to put on people, for almost no reason behind it. So you talk about, what's going on there and comparing that to the response that you're seeing in California. I think it's a pretty stark difference, especially also if you start thinking about what's happened in Maui and the response there.
Out in California on the front lines of this fire, and in particular I want to thank the firefighters for all they are doing. They are, as the president said, putting themselves in harm's way, and they are doing the work that is about helping people who are perfect strangers to them and doing it in some of the highest moments of need that anyone could face. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz Sherwood-Randall.
Turn it back to me.
Okay, back to the president.
Look, I've had a chance to speak with a lot of elected.
Did you guys notice that? I got to back that up. He actually knew the sequence here. She turned it over to the wrong person, and he corrected her. Like, I've never seen that before. Let me see it again here.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz Sherwood-Randall.
Turn it back to me.
Okay, back to the president.
Look, I've had a chance to speak with a lot of elected officials, including the senators, some of the congresspersons in the region, as well as the vice president as well. And I want to be clear that one of the reasons I've asked this larger group to get together is because they control the very agencies that are needed from a federal level to get things done. And we're in a situation where the U.S. Forest Service Chief, Randy Moore, is here. And he's going to provide an update in the fire situation in Los Angeles and discuss how the U.S. Fire Service, the U.S. Forest Service, is assisting Los Angeles and the state of California with fighting the wildfire, including the action his team has taken to suppress new fire starts. So, Chief, why don't you fire away?
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam Vice President. It's great to see you. I, too, consider California my home.
Yes.
And so it's great to be here to talk about this dramatic situation that we have. So the Forest Service and the Department of Interior are actively engaged in supporting the response to the wildfires in Southern California. And there are 4 major fires that we currently have going on. The Forest Service is in unified command with the LA County as well as other local city agencies. We're looking at the Eaton, the Hearst and the Lydia, and if you look at that area there, that's the northernmost part of that area where the fires have taken place. The Palisades fire, which CAL FIRE is in control of, and then we have a new start, which is this Sundown fire that just started last night, and it also has potential to expand quite significantly just based on the location it's at, but also the winds that are expected to continue. Right now, when I look at the mutual aid system in California, I want you to know that it's second to none in terms of how that system works and how it really moves to activate the federal firefighting community and how it is activated and engaged. You know, every year we prepare for these.
What just happened there? What was he told? I got to back this up. Like, I don't know. You know, usually they kind of inform the president of just important world events that are ongoing. If there's a situation they need to monitor, and then they have the opportunity to decide if they need to excuse themselves or what have you. But is he lost in his book? And she's trying to tell him, like, hey, turn to page 3. Let me see that again here. Watch her kind of like try to
really moves to activate the federal firefighting community and how it is activated and engaged. You know, every year we prepare for these Santa Ana winds. It's just that what is happening now is happening sooner. It's happening at a time now where we normally are at our lowest point in the fire year. And the fact that these fires are taking place now, it says that there are things that are going on in our climate that is creating truly year-round fire situations, and it's something that we all need to be mindful of, and this is a good indication of that. To give you an example, that if a fire starts from any ignition source during these Santa Ana winds, it has the potential for explosive growth and spread. And when that happens under these wind-driven conditions, it's very difficult to control. Now, in addition to this, when these winds are high, the aviation resources cannot fly. So it limits a lot of the potential area of support. As of this morning, there were over 4,000 firefighters that were assigned to these large fires. 600 or so were currently federal work, which means Forest Service and Department of Interior. And that doesn't include many who are assigned to their home units to provide initial attack. To give you an idea of the unsung heroes in these fire type conditions, in the last 24 hours, we've had 50 starts, and the initial attack success has been wonderful. So we've stopped the potential for 50 additional fires to be added to these 4 significant fires that we currently have. And that's what I mean by having initial attack crews stay put or pre-positioned across the state based on intelligence that we're gathering. And so I wanted to mention that because we talk about the active fire suppression, but there's so much that takes place behind the scenes that limits the amount of fires that our firefighters are having to respond to. The president did an excellent job of mentioning all of the resources that's available and that are assigned to the fire. I won't go over those, but we have a number of equipment that's out there that when the winds allow us, we'll be in the air fighting those fires. We also have a number of private contract crews that we're working with. We're working wonderfully with the state, county, and other federal firefighters, also the tribal firefighters as well in the communities. And we're looking at these maps, which we call the Modular Area Firefighting System Air Tankers. There's 8 of them. And there were, like I said, this time of the year, we're not ready for that. But within the next 24 to 48 hours, we'll have all 8 that's available for assistance. These aircrafts require lead planes to lead them into these fires. And so we're having to go through that whole process and ramp up really quick to get the inspections in, the check rides, so that these are qualified and are able to go. We're also working with our Canadian partners to mobilize 2 CL-415. These are water scoopers. They will clear customs on Monday, and they will be available after they clear federal inspections and the check rides. An important thing to know is that these aviation resources require a lot of support in the form of mechanics, airport space, helicopter managers, area supervisions. And so we're working with our state and local and federal agencies to identify these aviation support resources to be sure that we can respond effectively. Now, I had mentioned the amount of fires that we've responded to in the last 48 hours, and I mentioned the 50 fires in the last 24 hours. We're continuing to have new starts. We're continuing to monitor the types of activities. We have about 8,000 firefighters on standby to add to this if need be. Right now, we are going to monitor the number of aircraft and firefighters we have in that small space. Because as you can imagine, there's only so much you can put in a space before you create other challenges there. The airspace in that area is pretty tight. You have commercial airports and others in that area. You also, unfortunately, have drones in the air, which is a concern to our...
So, Douglas, I got a clip. This one's for you, all right? This is Los Angeles Fire Department.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or, you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
That does not inspire confidence in me, what we just witnessed there, let alone, I think, anyone else. But nonetheless, there's a lot of different kind of angles to this that are starting to come to light. But I think the core one is mismanagement, clear mismanagement, poor decision-making with the leadership in the state of California.
Our firefighters, both federal, state, and local, and tribal, are doing just an outstanding job in what I consider to be some significant challenges in a significant environment. I think, as I look at some of the questions that you may tend to ask, it's typical that the causes of fires isn't known immediately because resources are really focused on response. However, all the fire causes are investigated, and I want to be upfront with that. Each one of these fires will be investigated to see what the cause and origins of them are. And what we know now is that it would be unusual for there to be lightning-caused fires in Southern California at this time of the year. Fire investigations are the responsibility of the jurisdiction of where the fire starts, and we're ready to assist with this if and when needed. Thank you all.
Thank you. Randy, tell me about the conditions that we're dealing with on the ground. What's most concerning to you? Randy,
responsibility of R. And what we know now is that it would be unusual for there to be lightning-caused fires in Southern California at this time of the year. Fire investigations are the responsibility of the jurisdiction of where the fire starts, and we're ready to assist with this if and when needed. Thank you all.
Thank you. Randy, tell me about the conditions that we're dealing with on the ground. What's most concerning to you?
Most concerning right now is the wind. Because the wind is limiting our ability to put aircraft in the air. Aircraft will not put that fire out, but it gives our firefighters, our boots on the ground, a really good opportunity to put the fire out with a little help from retardant and water drops. With these Santa Ana winds, what's interesting about this part of California, these Santa Ana winds comes off the ocean usually in the mornings, and then you have the sundowner winds in the afternoon pushing the wind back the other way. And so while you're fighting to stop the fire this way in the morning, you're also fighting to stop the fire from coming back at you in the afternoon. The sundowner winds are not significant as we speak, but those are the challenges we have in that part of California. And so again, our firefighters are doing just an outstanding job of working in that type of environment, which their lives are really at risk pretty significantly under these conditions.
Thank you. I told you Administrator Griswold is off with the governor and inspecting some of these areas. So we have Bob Fenton. Bob, can you hear me? Hello, Bob.
Sir, Mr. President, I hear you.
Fire away.
You hear me, sir? I'm there. So the administrator is with right now the governor, the mayor of LA, county, local officials, getting a briefing on the fire to really understand what the needs are as we move forward, not only with regard to the firefight, which Chief Moore was talking about, but also to regard to support the population displaced. Over 360,000 under mandatory evacuations, hundreds of thousands more with warnings. And so what we're doing now is ensuring that that we're able to provide any support to provide mass care to individuals, any assistance for the sheltering, any assistance for feeding, and then through the programs that we provide through our individual assistance that you authorize through the declaration, we're able to assist individuals with funding to offset their hotel costs. So applying to FEMA on the 1-800-621-3362 number is important, or disasterassistance.gov. We're sending teams out to the shelters. We know that there'll be a huge need after fires for mental health specialists, and working with HHS on providing that. As the Vice President talked about, insurance is problematic in California, especially with the fires. And so not only do some of the changes in our authorities help now with those that are underinsured, which you see more and more, but we want those that are insured to start seeking assistance to their insurance companies. Our programs can help individuals, especially displaced and who have lost their homes, with rental assistance until they can rebuild, and ultimately provide temporary housing. So we're in discussions with state and local governments on how we will meet those housing needs, both in the interim by using available stockage here, but how can we help rebuild? And then lastly, I would just say that we're really focused on already starting to discuss debris removal and all the hazardous waste that comes from fire and how to remove that safely between local, state, and federal government. We'll rely on federal partners, US EPA, the Corps of Engineers, and others to be part of that technical assistance help to support the safe removal so that ultimately we could rebuild. And one of the things that we will start doing in the next couple of days is starting that discussion on how do we rebuild, and not only rebuild, but rebuild more resilient and bring together state and local federal agencies to start that discussion in the weeks to months ahead. And so right now we're focused on meeting the immediate needs of those displaced, but already starting to work on recovery and rebuild and bringing all our authorities and the full weight of the federal government and all the resources that you've authorized to help California in that endeavor.
Bob, what do you think the biggest challenge is?
Also, I got.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think the biggest challenge is going to be the mental health stress that is put on individuals that have lost everything. Fires are, so drastic. They destroy everything. Very quickly. Individuals don't have a lot of notice to leave, and so I think there's going to be a significant mental health strain, followed by a need to help individuals recover and rebuild. And the Vice President is exactly right. Why I suspect that many have insurance, many are underinsured. And insurance is difficult to get, and some might have lost their insurance or been canceled by insurance companies. And I think that's something we need to continue to work on. As a government at all levels, but something where there'll be gaps in assistance that we will need to bring in not only federal agencies but nonprofits, private sector to help meet those needs.
I think we're going to have to do that. In addition, the fact is that the two declarations I signed, provide for example, the rebuilding of churches and schools and certain, but not businesses, not business centers. And so That's going to be a gigantic cost as well. But the debris removal is a big deal. And that's going to take a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, it will take some time to remove the debris. In California, unfortunately, we've had a lot of experience with fighting fires and removing debris. And so it will take months to a year. This is a very widespread with significant damage to infrastructure. And we want to not only immediately remove the hazards, things like propane tanks, some of the power cells that are there, and other contaminants that may be in households, and make sure that they're safe to re-enter and re-look for personal effects. But then the second part is removing that ash, and what we've done before is help people with the removal so that we could get down on the grade and then immediately start rebuilding.
All right, I appreciate what you're doing, and like you said, 360,000 people have been evacuated so far.
Sure, appreciate.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yes, sir. I just want to let you know I'm on also with the fire administrator from FEMA, who's been working with the local fire chiefs, and I didn't know if you had any questions or she wanted to add anything to this discussion. Chief Lori Moore is on.
Well, I've been talking to them, so Chief, you want to add anything to this?
I will, sir. Thank you very much. And as you might know, I've been here, got here last night. It was important to get here on the ground with the fire chiefs and the firefighters that are here. So I've been with LA County, LA City Fire Chief since last night. We're at the Palisades EOC right now, as Regional Administrator Fenton just said, with the governor, with the FEMA administrator, getting the brief. The coordination of resources, it helps for us to be here, U.S. Fire Administration, as part of the response, because we're on the ground. We're able to explain ground truth and coordinate resources, streamline the communication between federal. We're also here checking on the firefighters on the front lines, and I really appreciate what you and the Vice President both said about the boots on the ground, because these are their communities, and nobody wants to fight the fire and save these communities more than these firefighters who are boots on the ground from the very moment the ignition began. So we're checking on them, and I will tell you they're exhausted. Obviously, many of them have been more than 6 hours on this now. They are able to take a quick nap sometimes in the truck, but they are on the job. And they keep fighting, and so they need to know that they matter. And so it's important that I show up with them.
Let me get back in screen here. What are you guys talking about? Everything's been completely destroyed, and it reminds me of Hurricane Katrina. I don't know if folks in the chat were in the Gulf Coast region at that point in time, but New Orleans, the 9th Ward, Chalmette. I don't know if you guys know all these regions. I'm sure you've heard of 9th Ward, but these areas, New Orleans East, were completely hit hard. A lot of the homes and structures were, completely blown away. And there was an opportunity at that point in time to kind of rebuild and restart, and let's bring in the bulldozers. And that's exactly what the funding was there and offered. They just didn't do it for some reason. And you got to think, why didn't they do that, right? Why didn't they come and just clean it all out and start over and get something new and up and running there? I'll be very interested in hearing how this unfolds. There was a lot of political, Louisiana is infamous for political corruption, and there was quite a bit of that at that point in time. Political corruption, politicizing things because of re-elections coming up. A lot of that was in play at that point in time. But again, with this scenario, I'm interested in the follow-through. What will happen in a year's time? Is it going to be federally subsidized, support through that duration, I don't know. Or is it going to be a lot of private investors that come in and just buy up the land because now it's premium real estate that they can rebuild not too far from the ocean, major portions of it overlooking, overlooking, the foothills down onto the ocean, Malibu also right along the ocean. I wonder how that's going to unfold in this scenario.
To see them, to say thank you, and to let them know that we are watching, that we know what they're doing. We want to make sure that we're here when injuries happen. And so we did have an injured firefighter in LA County, fell through a 3-story roof just about 2 hours ago. So several major injuries, but in the hospital. I'll be going to check on him shortly. And it is...
Interesting comment here. There has been a considerable amount of reporting that maybe a month or two before this disaster, a lot of insurance companies dropped policies altogether, and they stated it was because of the risk. So there's a lot of people. I mean, this is the scenario, right? Like, yes, there are people that are extremely wealthy in those areas, very large homes, so forth. They'll experience a loss, but they have the capacity to, bounce back. There's also a lot of people out there that have been in their homes 25, 30 years. And in the course of those 25, 30 years, the value of the real estate has significantly changed to the point where they're going to stay in that home. They cannot buy a home somewhere else. They could sell that house, but where are they going to go at that point? They may not get something equivalent or, anywhere near friends, family, or whatever it might be. So it's also a lot of people that have just lived there for quite some time, and the market just accelerated, with them just being caught up in it. So there's a lot of different scenarios here. It's not just hey, they're okay, their insurance is going to cover it. A lot of people's policies drop them. Are those people amongst the ones that have been there, 25, 30 years, and their home valuation went up significantly, but they're not in a position to, rebuild on their own like that?
It's about the response too, because often while they're in the midst of the response, these chiefs can't explain everything that is happening, and there's a lot of questions, as you might imagine, and are addressing. And so it's important that we're here to help explain why the fire's moving the way it is, the fire dynamics, helping people understand.
Yeah, so that's what I'm getting at, right, Matt? It's like there will be folks that politicize it and focus it in on wealthy people that are out in that area. And there's also plenty of folks that are in the middle that, again, just the home price, they've had that house since, 1995 or something, and the home prices have just taken off since then. And so what's like a $2.5–3 million home, maybe they bought it for a couple $100,000 back in the day.
And when there's questions, as you know, about the response or about the water, to help people understand that it's not over if there's not water in the hydrants. We have tenders, we have tankers, they're doing rescue. So there's a lot of work to be done, and controlling these perimeters. There's so much work that these firefighters are doing beyond the direct suppression on these fires. And so that's why we're here, and to continue to learn, because every one of these tragedies, unfortunately, is a lesson to how to prevent the next. And so it's important that we do that as well. And so we're going to remain on the ground here, sir, on your behalf for a couple other days to make sure that we are part of this conversation.
Well, you are part of the conversation. That's why I went out to California yesterday and met with those firefighters and met with those police officers, because there's also worry about looting and a number of other things. So they are really incredible people. They're making such sacrifices.
And unfortunately, there's plenty of footage of looting and stuff that you just mentioned. I mean, people evacuated early because, they value their lives. And 30 minutes, an hour later, another group of folks show up and they just have free reign of the community at that point. Really sad situation. Really sad situation.
But I think you're right, that we have to provide them all that is humanly possible for them to be able to do their job. And there's going to be a need. I want to say it again, and we all know it around this table, they're going to need for some help in terms of the psyche of these folks. There's going to be real problems regarding to the mental health issues, and we got to make sure we're prepared to deal with it. All right, now Deputy Secretary of Defense Kate Hicks. Secretary, why don't you tell us what you and I and others have been talking about the Defense Department doing and what they're prepared to do now.
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam Vice President. I'm right here.
The screen,
no worries. Yeah, I surprised you.
Yeah.
We are very much leaning in here at the Defense Department.
I mean, it never fails. You watch something like this and pay attention a little bit more detail, and you see how disconnected he is with what's going on, how the process is going to unfold in front of them. I mean, it's one thing after another.
Department. We, of course, are always looking for how we can support state and local
corn
partners,
pop.
and of course our interagency partners in the federal sector that you've already heard from. And that includes every tool that we believe we can leverage that
we'll keep the corn
causes
pop,
us to always lean forward to make sure our
partners
partners understand what we could bring and be responsive to requests that they're coming forward with. And we have been in receipt of some requests. I will turn, with your permission in a moment, to Chairman Brown, and then we also have on the screen with us the NORTHCOM Commander, General Guillot, who is our focal point for responses here in the United States homeland. Secretary Austin this morning out in Germany already in his opening remarks for the final Ukraine Defense Contact Group spoke explicitly to our intent and efforts underway now to provide surge support, and so I just want to emphasize it's so important to us that he's put that front and center even while he's concluding this important work overseas. You had mentioned some of the efforts we already have underway. We are ready, as I said, to engage with our partners on further efforts. With your permission, I'll turn to Chairman Brown.
Please. Chairman.
Mr. President, Madam Vice President, as you highlighted, we do have 500 personnel already identified to be able to support. Not so much in firefighting, because it takes some 10 days of training that would be required, and we don't want to pull firefighters away from that, but they can also support with route clearance capabilities, commodity distribution. We talked about the airlift with their helicopters. There's 10 U.S. Navy helicopters as well as 10 Guard helicopters. The winds have been challenging to get them airborne. They can also help with the ground search and rescue, incident response, awareness, and then medical support. Those Marines will be in place in the next 24 to 48 hours. The California National Guard also has, by tomorrow, they'll have about 1,000 service members that will be available to be able to support as well. About 250 of those actually have some firefighting capability, and they can be trained in the next 24 to 48 hours to also support firefighting. As was mentioned, the C-130s with the modular aerial firefighting system, 2 of those are already at Channel Island.
Explain what that means to the average listener.
Yeah, so what it is, it's a C-130 that's modified. It has a system that's put in a modular system that's put into the back of the C-130, and so it's able to push out either water or the slurry retardant associated with it. And as was highlighted, they're usually prepared to do this during the firefighting season. This is several months prior to when they would typically do this. And so there's 2 C-130s that are already at Channel Island. They're in just northwest of Los Angeles. The other 6 will be there within the next 24 hours or so. The first flight will start tomorrow, and then they will continue to be prepared to be able to support. We're also looking at surrounding bases that may have ability to bed down any displaced personnel or families. We got about 1,000 beds that have been identified at either Edwards, March, or Fort Irwin there in California. In addition, we're using March Reserve Base as a incident response area and getting that set up. Mr. President, last thing I would say is and before I turn to General Guillot, what we really try to do is identify things that we know we could lean forward on before there's even an ask. We want to make sure we cut down the timeline to get provided capability. And we also want to make sure, and I know that General Guillot is communicating that with Ms. Griswold from FEMA, so that we want to make sure we, as I say, provide an a la carte menu of all the things we have available. So even if they don't have time to think about it, we're already looking ahead. Last thing I would say is when I met this afternoon with my staff, the thing we also talked about is there's an immediate response, but there's also, as was highlighted, the longer term response of things that we'd have to be able to look at in recovery. And so we're already thinking ahead of what options DOD may be able to provide to support. Any of your questions, and I can turn
You
it
guys
to
have been immediately responsive. Thank you. I mean, you're right on top of things. But let's turn to General.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, and thank you, Chairman. Northcom, on behalf of the Department of Defense, is aggressively taking action to deliver capabilities to California as soon as they are requested. So in addition to the aircraft and ground forces and the installation support that President Biden and Chairman Brown mentioned, we've identified other capabilities such as helicopter support, search and rescue, both from the ground or from the air, commodity distribution, route clearance, and medical capabilities that we've postured and have leaned forward to make sure that they're able to deploy to California and operate just as quickly as they are requested. And to do that, we're cooperating very closely with FEMA, with the state of California, and the National Guard Bureau to deliver the right capabilities at the right time for the women and men of California.
Well, the Defense Department, I got to say, stepped up immediately. I didn't even, matter of fact, I got a call what you need before I even asked. So thank you all. And you have incredible capacity and capabilities. It's just getting them in place as quickly as possible is the most important thing. You're doing that right now. So I think you're going to see an awful lot of help coming based on what you want to do, what you can do, and the entire department is surging capacities, in my understanding, including the aerial equipment to fight these fires. So thank you very much. Now I'd like to speak to our Department of Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm. She will brief us on power outages and initial assessments of impacts on the power grid in Los Angeles area. And Madam Secretary, it's all yours, wherever you are.
We're looking to see if she's still on the screen. She had to board a plane, so if she has had to board, the Deputy Secretary, Dave Turk, is sitting at the end of the table.
And it looks like she is on her plane, so
It's all you. Now, fire away.
I'll give the update, Mr. President. And she's on the way, Mr. President, to Puerto Rico again on official visit, given the island-wide blackout there, and doing everything we can to help on that front per your guidance and the Vice President's direction as well. And of course, again, per your guidance, we're doing everything we can to help, working with partners, including our utility partners, but also other federal partners as well. As of just coming into this meeting, there's about a little over 400,000 customer outages in California. Important to note that these are both actual outages, power that's actually been disrupted because of the fire, but also proactive shut-offs, just as you mentioned as well, to prevent fire ignition and the spread of fire. We've got two main utilities out there, Southern Cal Edison and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And we're in close and continuing contact, including with their CEOs, Pedro and Janice, as well, including calls with them just a few hours ago, just to make sure we're doing everything we can to help. We're coordinating with those utilities and with utilities literally across the country to make sure that we've got all the capabilities that we have in the federal government, but our utility partners to provide that. I want to thank you, Mr. President. You joined a call just a couple months ago with Liz and our secretary to thank all of these utility CEOs. We've got this phenomenal partnership with utilities all across the country. It's called mutual assistance. And if any utility in any one region needs help, all the other utilities, and we last unleashed this phenomenal partnership to bring 40,000 utility workers to Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, the affected regions with the two hurricanes back to back. And everybody
continue to talk to me. They've been deployed so many places.
Well, having been with the utilities out, we were all in Colorado for this meeting. They just appreciated you taking the time to thank them for their personal leadership. And it's the utility CEOs themselves who make the time for these calls going forward. We're working closely with all the utilities. We're also in continuing contact with the transmission operators. The disruption has really been at the distribution level, at the local level, but we want to make sure there's not broader outages and broader concerns. As of now, we're not seeing any issues with stability of the broader transmission system, either in the region or across California or more broadly. So that's a good news part of where we're at now, of course. We're working with the utilities trying to restore power to customers as quickly as we're able, but full restoration, of course, is going to take some time here. In particular, the comprehensive damage assessment will take time and can't begin until it's safe for crews to get in there and actually do the assessments and do the work. So we're working, Madam Vice President, as you said at the outset, with a real sense of urgency here, but also with a sense of we'll do whatever we can over the long haul to do right by our responsibilities.
David, one of the things that everybody's mentioned so far is the mental stress it's going to cause for average Americans that are caught in the middle of all this. And one of the things that, it's not, these aren't everyday, no matter how well educated one is, they're not always certain how power is transmitted, why it's transmitted the way it is, and so on. Could you explain to the folks here, the public is listening, what the impact on some of the utilities have had on the ability to generate the pumping of water? Because there's a lot of accusations going around that it's because that the local leadership didn't care. I mean, explain how this works and why it makes sense what's happening.
So this is an issue, actually. Secretary Granholm was on the phone with the CEO of Southern Cal Edison to talk exactly about this and make sure we were doing everything we can on that front. And it's both the power issue, and you mentioned generators and other ways that we can try to help solve the problem there, but it's also the pressure and making sure that we're thinking of these things holistically. And certainly my experience over the last 4 years under your leadership is it's not one department, it's not one slice.
So again, not being straightforward, diverting attention, and it's not just about the water pressure, which again, if you have more water, there's going to be more pressure, but it's not just about what they're talking about and kind of implying here. It's also about how dry the area is, right? The lack of water resources that exist, years and years of drought that could have been avoided if that routing had not been altered.
If you're federal government that is responsible, energy and water issues overlap in a lot of different ways. So we work with our EPA colleagues and others to make sure that we're bringing all of our expertise and explaining it to our fellow Americans. It's important that we give transparent information and information they can rely upon.
Well, I think it's just people don't know how it functions. And for example, since I've been president, I've been in an aircraft flying over more territory where there have been wildfires, from Arizona all the way up to Idaho and beyond, and that make up an area larger than the entire state of Maryland, that burned to the ground. And one of the problems has been that people don't understand that when these high winds occur, what happens is, or when these storms occur, these utility poles, these whole, those big lines, you see where all the lines are on, they fall to the ground in the middle of the forest. It's not just about raking the leaves under the trees, it's about the fires that causes. And so utilities have to shut down the ability to continue to transmit on those lines. And the consequence of that, I don't think most people think, no matter how well educated they are, unless they're in the area, that there's a direct correlation between the utility company and the ability to pump water out of a hydrant. And so it allows for a lot of uninformed people to make assertions or concerns or accusations about the local officials not caring or not working. So as I understand it, the vast majority of the circumstances where the water resource has been diminished is because of the utility company not being able to maintain the electric transmission because they're getting knocked down, they're shutting down so they don't cause more fires.
Exactly.
But now what is happening is, are we getting cooperation with utility companies to bring in generators and others to bring in generators to generate the energy to allow that fire hydrant to function.
I'm going to quote Trump from the debate. I don't think he knows what he just said there. I have no idea what he's saying here. He's just meandering with some words. There's no real description of the source or the causes here, right? It's just kind of like these random things. Some randomness has caused what's going on here. Not really acknowledging and taking ownership or holding people accountable. None of that's happening. It's just we're gonna make things up and hope that it kind of blows over on people.
Explain that a little bit.
So this is the pragmatic can-do attitude, and folks who've been literally doing these, our civil servants and others, for their careers, and making sure that we're solutions-oriented. We sometimes call our department the solutions department, as Liz knows from having been Deputy Secretary of the Department of Energy. And so whatever gets the power on to allow the water, whatever gets the job done, a lot of times it's working with our defense colleagues who have terrific assets that can be brought in quite quickly. The other point I'd like to make, Mr. President, to thank you and the Vice President's leadership and our folks in Congress, your bipartisan infrastructure legislation actually provided $10 billion. It's a GRIP program for grid resiliency to improve the resilience of our grids so that when the grids do go down, they come back on quicker. That's $10 billion that we've already gotten out the door and is being invested in communities all across the country. We need more of that. We need continued focus on infrastructure, but infrastructure matters.
It matters a great deal because, for example, one of the things that I knew, but I didn't know that I didn't put a number on it. It'd be a lot easier if these electric lines are running underground in contained vessels. So in the middle of forest, so there's nothing that, but it costs what, 6 times more?
It can cost 6 times more, and we're doing a lot more undergrounding thanks to your leadership on the infrastructure funding. It's not cost effective everywhere, and
some places it's necessary.
Some places it's absolutely necessary, and we need to have the funding and support to do that as quickly as we can.
Well, I think we're moving in the right direction. I know it. Look, this is really, really, really difficult for the families to have to deal with it. I mean, the I have a family member who lives out there, and the area where he lives, I'm not getting into detail, but where he lives, I think there are something like 240 or 260 homes that burned to the ground, all but 14 or 15 of them. And everybody has to evacuate. And people are going, when do I get back? Will I ever find that picture album? Will I ever find the jewelry that my grandmom gave me? Will I ever, there's so much anxiety that's generated. And I think that we've been through this once before in Hawaii where the fires occurred and we're trying to build back up the community so they could open up and things be running. But it's really, really, really hard. So I'm going to make an appeal right now to the United States Congress. They're going to have to step up when we ask for more help to get these people the kind of shelter they need, to get the kind of help they need, because it really does matter. And you guys do, I'm not being solicitous, you all do a hell of a job. And we've learned, unfortunately, so much. And there is, in case you haven't noticed, there is global warming. It does change weather patterns. And as you explained, Randy, winds going in.
It's such an easy thing to just drop out there. Like, it's changed the weather patterns. It's global warming. That's what's causing this. And yet, if you look for years and years and years, there's been continuous forest fires and a lot of these disasters have gone on. It's just by chance the wind or the point of, the starting point of it did not line up with the city. And very unfortunate that it did this go around.
And the wind's coming out. You get the one going in, but you don't want the one coming back out. And so my point is that I think the more we can explain to the American people in plain, straightforward, honest English or whatever language that of us understand what exactly is happening, the more likely we're likely to get the kind of support and not make a political deal out of this. I'm leaving this office very shortly, but it's not about the politics. It's about giving people some sense of security that we're going to be able to get this under control, but it's going to take time. And it's going to take time. And like I said, in the next little bit, we're going to be going back to Congress asking for some more help on some of this stuff. And I hope they're ready to step up because we can afford it. And like I said, we have a little infrastructure bill that's over $1 trillion. It's going to be able to help a little bit.
Again, we can afford it. We have an infrastructure bill that was over $1 trillion. He's grinning about that. So we can afford it. It's this bizarre mentality that you can print to no end. And it's tied to what a lot of the economists that support him and supported Harris, they all ascribe to modern monetary theory, which that's the basis of it. No big deal. You're the federal government. Print as much as you want. If inflation creeps up, just raise taxes because that kills demand. Not to mention somebody that's barely affording a dozen eggs all of a sudden gets less money to buy those eggs with now. And then debt to GDP or issuing massive amounts of debt. No big deal because you could always print more money to pay for it. So I mean, he's excited about this because it's kind of like, oh, it's no big deal. I got all the money in the world. I could just hit the printing press again.
We have done a lot in terms of what we're going to do in terms of providing for this rebuilding of communities. And so I think the most important thing we have to do, those of us sitting around this table and on the screen, is explain in simple, straightforward language what the capacity we have is, how we're using that capacity, and what capacity we don't have that we need. And in order to keep things from just all these, in crisis, rumors and fear spread very quickly. And the most important thing is to just bring this down in an area, be honest with people, what's at stake, but be straightforward with them. What can be done and how we're going to get it done. So I thank you all very much. I'm proud of the job you're all doing, and I'm quite frankly proud of the job of local officials in California are doing. I've spent a lot of time with the governor and the mayor of Los Angeles and others. They're doing everything that we ask of them and beyond, and so we're stepping up as best we can. Any of my colleagues around the table, around the screen, want to add anything before we close this out?
Well, as the Californian at the table, thank you for all of the leadership that everyone here has provided, starting with our president. We're beyond the point of calling it fire season.
Yeah, that's right.
We really, and we're seeing this around the country, that whereas years before we would talk about a particular season of extreme weather, we are seeing that it doesn't matter what month of the year, we should be ready. The work that our administration has done in particular on the issue of infrastructure, together with the Inflation Reduction Act and the attention we are paying to the climate crisis, is so important because we have got to invest as a country in adaptation, and we have to invest in resilience. And that is about homeowners, that is about families, that is about cities and local governments, state governments, and we...
Guys, what is she saying here? We have to invest in resilience? Like personal resilience? The infrastructure resilience? And then in the same vein, we need to invest in adaptation?
Have to adapt to this changing climate. For example, fire hydrants are pretty much built to deal with an individual house fire, not with a wildfire that is taking...
It is built for the house fire, not for the wildfire. Like what?
On entire residential communities, where these homes are providing the fuel for that fire to grow. We have to put more resources into our fire departments and firefighters, understanding that we are asking a lot of them that traditionally they never had to do. And because of their commitment to their profession, they're attempting to rise to the moment of crisis. But we need to put more resources into those individual professionals and into the departments that sustain that work with the mission that is such an important mission in times like this. So, Mr. President, I thank you for your leadership, your foresight to understand what over these last 4 years we could do to leapfrog in front of what we know to be a changing climate to meet these types of moments.
Do you think she's going to mention context? We exist in the context. Let's see.
And God bless all of the people who are on the ground right now in California doing that work.
I thank you for your comments, and I think I totally agree with you, which will not surprise anybody. Look, there's an expression from a famous Irish poet. He said, all's changed utterly. A terrible beauty has been born. All has changed in the weather. Climate change is real, fundamentally altering, not just here, but around the world. Around the world, what's going on. And we've got to adjust to it. We've got to adjust to it. And we can. It's within our power to do it, but we've got to acknowledge it to begin with. Just acknowledge that there's a change taking place, that we're not going to be able to legislate away. It's real. There is global warming. It's real. It's having a profound impact, and where it goes from here, I don't know, but I know one thing. We have the capacity to respond to it if we, in fact, exercise our good judgment. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Do you trust that California will get the aid they need in the next administration?
I'm not in a position to answer that question. I pray God they will.
Do you have
Mr. President, do you have a sense of how much this is going to cost in the end?
No, the truth of the matter is no one can tell you that. For example, just clearing the debris. You saw what happened when we were dealing with the hurricanes that occurred from North Carolina to Florida. The cost of the debris cleanup is gigantic, gigantic. The cost of replacing the housing is almost exponential. I mean, we don't know what it is, but we know one thing we have to do. We have to stay with it. We have the capacity to do it, but we don't know that. Anybody give you a number now, they have no idea what the hell they're talking about. It's a big, big, big number.
Mr. President, Mr. President, can you update us, please, on the Hamas hostages and what you think of the incoming administration's efforts and ultimatum?
I can, but I'm not sure it's appropriate for now. We're making some real progress. I met with negotiators today. I think there's what's going on right now in Lebanon is we finally have a president. He's a first-rate guy. I spent time on the phone with him today, about 20 minutes to a half an hour, what they have planned. They're also working very hard with the Lebanese military, accountable to the Lebanese people, not Hamas, not Hezbollah, not any other group. And so I think we're seeing some progress. And I know hope springs eternal, but I'm still hopeful that we'll be able to have a prisoner exchange. Hamas is the one getting in the way of that exchange right now, but I think we may be able to get that done. We need to get it done. Thank you all very much.
What else can you do to help Ukraine?
He tried to close it out by thanking everyone. I think he's stuck in his seat. He's having some trouble standing up right now, so he's stuck. They're just going to keep yelling at him with questions, and he doesn't know where to go with it from here. Someone needs to come in and rescue him.
Or you leave your office.
Everything they need. All
right. So, I mean, all of this stuff, I really didn't want to center in on the Joe gives you a migraine. I didn't want to center in on the fires that were going on. It was like a tragedy, and the more you hear about it, the more you read about it, and I mean, let me scroll back up here, right? The level of evidence that's out there like this, where there is formal objections written to the Board of Fire Commissioners in the state, because of budgetary cuts. 7 million described here, and they're adversely affecting, and I'm reading from here, the department's ability to maintain core operations. Again, not trying to invest, not trying to buy anything new and fancy, just to do the job, right? It's it's a difficult one to kind of swallow when it's so quickly come out, all of this content. These objections that have come from appropriate leadership. A lot of folks are being critical of the fire chief out there, and I mean that's a whole separate discussion to have. At this point, there's a level of poor decision making, bad prioritization, and so there's a number of these types of documents out there that show, like, hey, you guys cut our budget. This is going to result in catastrophic impacts. Trump has come out on a number of occasions in the past talking about the diversion of water, and it's caused the forests and everywhere else to become even drier. The programs that will clean up brush and debris to not, give the fuel for those fires to, accelerate and get out of control. Those budgets have been cut, and you wonder, it's like, wait a minute, this is California. They're the, biggest GDP out of all the states. They have the largest GDP out of all the states individually. How are they lacking in these funds? And then you just back up a little bit too, and it's like, okay, Gavin's been there for about 8 years or whatever it is, 6 years. And, he made that commitment in the not too recent past to say, I'm going to dedicate $24 billion to end homelessness in the state. It's going to be gone. And the funny thing is, for so long, I've heard that $20 billion would end homelessness across the United States. This is probably pre-COVID thing, but that was like the one-liner that a lot of folks would throw out there, and it was an accepted figure. And then you'd scratch your head and wonder, like, well, wait a minute, why don't we just do it? Just do it, solve it. I don't know what that means to end homelessness exactly, if they're going to be $20 billion a year to do it, but I'd hope they do it in a way that's systemic and would help uplift people, make them self-sufficient. But regardless, the state of California spent $24 billion to solve the homelessness crisis only in their state, right? Where that could have gone to solve it across the country potentially. And now they can't account for that money. It's absolutely gone. And there's a ton of reporting and a ton of scrutiny that Newsom and the state has been under because of this. And then you look at something like this where $7 million is taken away from the fire services, right? And it's upwards of, more than 20 actually, when you look at all the different pieces. This is just one element, looking at the overtime pay. A lot of that should still be in place. And why aren't they applying that? Why couldn't they have just applied that $24 billion to shore up these services? Right? I mean, you think about it. That's like, is that a tenth? No. That's 1%. 20. Am I getting that right? No, it might be even less than that. Hang on. I got to do some math. Hey, what is 20 million divided by 20 billion? Wow. It's 0.1%. 0.1%. That's how big billions are. It's telling me it's 0.1%. I had to pause for a second. I was like, wait a minute. I'm like underestimating a zero here. So, I mean, budget cuts that account for 0.1%, and they're cutting core services, right? Whereas when they criticize Republican budgetary cuts that are being proposed, those cuts are towards these supplemental programs, right? Like the DEI stuff that's been mentioned in the chat. It's all these supplemental things that, hey, they're kind of a nice to have if you think they are nice to begin with. They're not really needed to establish core services. And that's the type of decision making and the kind of gaps in leadership that's just bizarre. Yeah, not a, what does he say? Not a magnet. Says this guy's full of disinformation. Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden just puts out the disinformation constantly. You're absolutely right. Same with Gavin Newsom. So I mean, it's really difficult to kind of swallow when you start seeing all this information that's out there. Yeah, I agree. Not a magnet. Biden has no idea what he's talking about. You're 100% right. So anyway, I wasn't really going to go into this topic, but I started looking into it a little bit, and it's just crazy. And it speaks to the priorities. Like, what are your priorities? Is it the population that you represent, that you are here to take care of, that you've been elected to take care of, or is it something else? Like, or is it just, they call it virtue signaling. They call it, these pet projects, whatever it might be. Are you there just to make a name for yourself? Like Newsom in the footage that I showed earlier. I'll pull it back up here. Look, he's standing in front of
what is the situation with the water?
These buildings that are on fire for a photo op.
Last night in the hydrants, I was talking to the firefighter on this block. They left because there was no water in the hydrant here.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system. I mean, those hydrants are typical for 2 or 3 fires, maybe 1 fire. You have something at this scale, but again, that's going to be determined by the local.
Again, passing the buck, not taking any accountability, right? What happened to the buck stops here? I mean, that's like antiquated thinking now at this point, right? And BTK, I appreciate this comment here. This is a good one, guys. Nonprofits have no incentive to solve anything. They'd make more money. They'd make no more money or have any jobs. And that is, I think, the biggest problem with nonprofits. So I sat on the board of a nonprofit in New Orleans when I lived out there. And this was one of my criticisms that I gave to the director during our sessions was that, hey, all we ever talk about, as I entered the board is new fundraising opportunities, new positions to create, new departments to create. Why aren't we talking about the end goal of this nonprofit? And at what point do we say we've kind of met the goals that we've had? Right? I mean, the goals of this particular one was home ownership and establishing that. So, okay, what would that look like if we met that requirement? Like, do we want half of the city to have had this level of financial fluency and to have experienced home ownership? I don't know. You need to have some sort of a target. And so then it becomes this perpetual cycle of just going out there and fighting continuously. You hear the Democrats say it a lot. Kamala said it a lot. Like, I will fight for you. I will continue to fight. What are we fighting for? At some point, those challenges of the past have been resolved, and you're just either exaggerating them as continuing, or you're creating new ones that really don't exist or not important. I don't know, but it leads to situations like this where that becomes the focus, whether they realize it or not. And I think it depends on the politician that creates, a captive audience and group that'll continuously vote for you. And they leverage that for power, right? There are no term limits for Congress. They'll just continue to push this stuff. So unfortunately, California finds itself in this really poor position. And a lot of documentation around it. Trump has called them out continuously over the years. But then you've got, folks like the squad that are out here just chomping at the bit to politicize this issue. So I appreciate you guys joining me this evening. Again, I didn't intend on jumping online to talk about this. Tomorrow morning, early, I'll be online. Trump is supposed to be sentenced. The Supreme Court did not say throw this out. This is not something that needs to continue forward. So he's scheduled for sentencing tomorrow morning at at 9:30 Eastern. I'm on Central Time Zone here. But 9:30 Eastern, he's scheduled to be sentenced. What the heck's going on with that? What does that mean, right? So I'm going to be online. We'll kind of watch that unfold live. But that's just another one that's just like a head scratcher, right? The whole thing around those 34 counts around, honestly, they say falsifying business records, but it's a miscategorization of spend at worst. They're saying, though, that's not a legal expense, right? Though some other type of business transaction. And the only reason that this has even become an issue is because Trump self-funded. And by self-funding, because of the election compliance laws and regulations, his personal finances became subject to audit by the Federal Election Committee. And so then they just dive into it from there. And in all honesty, like, so what? If he came into a settlement with somebody and he's called that a legal fee, or actually, he doesn't even do it. Like, I don't know where people are having this disconnect. Trump does not sit there and do his own accounting. He's got a whole team of accountants that do that for him. So saying that he had malicious intent in doing something like this is completely ridiculous. And it's for $130,000. So, like, you know, we just went over the difference between 20 billion and 20 million, right? It's 1,000 times difference. It's the same sort of scale when you look at it with respect to Trump. Like, is he really worried about $130,000 when he's running, you know, a portfolio in excess of $3 billion? Like, does that even make sense? Right? Because it's actually 10,000, a little over 10,000 times the difference, if I'm doing the math right on top of my head. So it's like, he's not worried about dollars and cents at that level. Probably if something doesn't hit like a $25 million threshold, he's delegated that to other people to make decisions on at that point. So complete farce. If you want to question that level of accounting and, you know, categorization, whether something's a legal expense or whatever else they expected that to be, I mean, you've basically opened up criminal prosecution to every single executive of all Fortune 500 companies. Yeah, I do think Joe Biden still has money, not a magnet. I mean, he's got that tucked away. It's been kind of demonstrated in Congress that there's a number of different shell companies and accounts that are offshore, and that got squashed pretty quickly. But anyway, I'll be online tomorrow morning. Maybe I'll see if I can create a placeholder of that, but tune into that. If you guys on your way out, give this a like, subscribe, and take a look. I got in my bio, I don't know if it's in the description for this particular stream, not allowed it to the description, but link in bio for Ground News. It says 15% off right now, but they're running a special with my code for 40% off. So get the Vantage plan, get 40% off. They got an excellent product that, you know, I might just pull it up here, actually. Oh, I don't know if I'm signed in. What's going to do it? Ground.news. Am I signed in? Oh, I am signed in. Great. So you can check it out. Like, all right. So the LA, you know, fires, you got that here. 61 sources. And you see the stripe flag. That's not the France flag. That's saying the number of left-leaning resources that have started coverage on this particular story versus right versus center being just the white one. And you can see this one. Elon Musk calls on California and Delaware to force auction of OpenAI stake. Financial Times says, look who's not covering this story right now. It's only 6 sources, but look who hasn't picked it up yet. So, I mean, that's just one aspect of it that it kind of helps shed some light on for you. So let me click on this one. It's got about 70 sources. Not a lot of coverage on the right, but it gives you a bias comparison. Hey, this is the language and the terms in which the left is describing it and the center describes it in this way. Bias distribution, ownership of the publications that are pushing this particular story, the factuality of those publications, a lot of good data. The thing is, I have to personally go to like multiple websites to get the full story on anything, and this helps me get it like really quick in one shot. So it saves me a lot of time to do a little research on this. But Anyway, 40% off the Vantage plan. Check it out. Link in bio should be in the description as well. I appreciate you guys. Be back online tomorrow with the sentencing that Trump is going to be undertaking. So thank you guys. Take care.
Darkness falls, truth emerges, political cow unveils the lies. Behind the screen, wisdom surges, lighting up hate with her eyes. In the shadows, secrets lurk. She exposes, she ignites. With every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. With every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Oh, political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Breaking the law. Icons crumble, empires fall. She stands tall, fierce and cold. Her voice echoes a thunderous call. In the chaos, her strength unfolds. False prophets scatter, truth ascends. The world watches, mesmerized. Political cows, battle never ends. In her light, dark meets its demise. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. At every post, she does the work, unmasking darkness, revealing lights. Political cow, the beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Breaking the law. Political cow. Political cow. Political cow. Political cow. The beacon bright, unveiling truth, banishing night. Her voice cuts through, stark and raw, shattering deception, breaking the law. Breaking the law. Breaking the law. Breaking the law. Political cow. Icons crumble, empires fall. She stands tall, fierce and cold. Her voice echoes a thunderous call. In the chaos, her strength unfolds. False prophets scatter, truth ascends. The world watches, mesmerized. Political cows, battle never ends. And in her light, dark meets its demise.